Well, hello and welcome. I'm Vishnu Shom. I'll give you an update of the encounter which has been taking place in Jammu and Kashmir. 4 Indian Army soldiers, that includes 2 officers, 2 men believed to be captains, and 2 Jawans, have been killed in action in this encounter, which is ongoing. It is taking place in the Kalakot forest area of Rajouri. What we do now know is security forces telling us that there is a sense that one of those terrorists who has also been killed in this encounter has been identified. A man called Kari, a Pakistani national, apparently a high-ranking official of the Lashkar-e-Toiba. He was one of those security agencies believe was sent in to revive terrorism in this particular area. And I think what we need to understand is a couple of key points. While the overall trend as far as terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir has gone down over the last couple of years, we've seen a real upsurge and an uptick in violence which has taken place in the Rajouri Poonch area. The Pir Panjal forest region, the mountain region, is an area where in dense foliage and in dense jungles, we have seen attempts over the last several months by terrorists who come in to establish that as some sort of a stronghold or to establish that as a base of operations against the Indian Army. What makes operations over there very difficult is the nature of the terrain, extremely mountainous, extremely forested, but also the tactics being used by terrorists are not something that we have seen very frequently used elsewhere. There have been ambushes which have been laid in the past, but it's these establishment of ambushes which are very carefully choreographed, very carefully planned, and taking advantage of the terrain and taking advantage of the foliage that we actually find spots which have been set up. And then with intelligence information or otherwise to clear out these areas, when the army does end up in operations, they come into these areas where they come under attack. Now, we do know that the 2 army captains who have been killed in action at this time were members of a highly decorated and respected special forces unit. And, among the best that the Indian Army can actually field. What the Indian Army will do is that they will win the encounter. It's just a matter of time. But what we've seen is terrorists operating in this region, in these ambush type operations, end up extending the scope of the operations and the time taken before it actually ends for an extended period of time. So it's very difficult to actually get into how many hours or how many days an operation like this can happen. And given the foliage, the clearing up operations or the mopping up operations, when they do take place, can actually take a fairly long period of time as well. What we can share is that there's been a large number of officer casualties in the Indian Army and in the police forces, because in the fight against terrorism, the army and the police work together in Jammu and Kashmir over the last several months. While the officer corps of the Indian Army and indeed officers of the Indian police always lead from the front, that's part of their operational and professional ethos. The number of officers who've actually lost their lives this year, significant. 2 captains now, a major and a colonel earlier on. Again, in all of these areas where these terrorists are taking advantage of the terrain. So coordinating operations have now taken place. What the army has been doing, in fact, the security agencies, is working very closely with the use of relatively new technology, which has been inducted, by which I mean drones, small ones, unmanned aerial vehicles of the army and the air force as well, to try and pin down the location of these terrorists, whether it's their infrared signatures, their heat signatures, or whether it is videography or images and a live feed of an encounter site which they do detect. So it is tense, and it is part of a strategy without any doubt to establish the Pir Panjal range, Rajouri Poonch, as an area of new operations at a time when the Kashmir Valley, fortunately, has seen a marked de-escalation in terms of the number of incidents of terrorism that have taken place.